and artist, and I love to use my iPad to illustrate things, and I'm going to show you which Procreate brushes are my favorite to use in my practice. This is my Apple Pencil 1st generation and my iPad Air 3rd generation. Let's talk lines. My first favorite line art brush to use is the 6B pencil because it's really rich and you also get a good grain when you use it, but when you draw with it, it just feels really smooth, and I just like how that comes off. And because of the grain, when you color with it as well, you get a nice texture, so it's dual usage. The next one is not a default brush. This is the VV Pencil Grainy Brush. I'll link it below. I like it for the same reasons I like the 6B pencil, but it is more grainy, hence the title. So when I color or when I line art with this, it just has additional texture, which I think makes a piece look more visually interesting. And unlike the 6B, you can make it much larger, which is even more helpful for coloring large spaces. The third brush I'm talking about is the Mercury brush. This is a inking brush. So I really enjoy all the pressure sensitivity, as well as just kind of how it looks. It looks kind of a watery, inky vibe. The fourth brush is called Kunyani. This is like Mercury, it is a default brush. The really painterly look to it that I really enjoy. This fifth brush is called Derwent. It is a pencil brush, and I think it's very sketchy, and I like how light it is. The sixth brush is called 5 Pix Hard. It comes in 3 sizes. I downloaded it and I'll link it below. I love how pixelated and textured this brush is, and it's really great for doing line art and comics. Last brush is the dry ink brush. Amazing pressure sensitivity. Now we're going to talk about my favorite paint brushes. This first brush is the Spectra brush. This is a default brush in Procreate. I like how it kind of has a watercolory lightness, and then when you press harder, it looks even more saturated, and this is really versatile to use when painting and coloring. The next brush is the gouache brush, another default brush. I like how you can layer color on. This next one's called Canvas on Acrylic. I downloaded it, I'll link it below. I wanted that kind of acrylic textured look that I wasn't really finding with the default brushes, and I like how the colors layer on top of each other. This one is the wet acrylic brush. It's very similar to the gouache brush, and I discovered when you make it really big, you can color in a different way because it just adds a different kind of texture. This last brush is not a default brush. It's called Rowenic Watercolor, and I'll link it down below. I just really like how it really looks like I'm painting with watercolor, and it reacts in the same way. Now let's talk texture. A super important part of digital art is adding texture to your pieces. This was a kind of a pricey set. It's called the Risograph. It was $8, but I'm still really glad I bought it. I love how it can shade and add this beautiful grain. Another brush I like to use to add texture I also downloaded online. It's called LL Pebbles, and I think it adds kind of this interesting papery look. In this last part of the video, I wanted to show a quick little demonstration of how I would illustrate something very basic, a humble frog. So I start off with the sketch that I do with Derwent, the pencil brush, and then I use the lasso tool to create kind of an outline of the piece. And then when I fill the color in, there's going to be this really crisp outline, and I think that creates a really nice contrast. I'm going to go into my paint folder of my paint brushes and click the wet acrylic, turn that all the way up, and then make sure it's not hidden. And then I want to make sure that I do light stamps to create an interesting texture just with my paintbrush. Then I'll select a bit of a lighter green and then use my same brush to sort of stamp on additional layering of the color so the coloring just looks more visually interesting. Then I'm going to select my pebble brush to add texture. So you can either select a color that's much darker or much lighter than the base color you've used, and then just use that for shading, and that's where the texture comes in. So I kind of imagine where the light would fall on my frog, and kind of just trial and error, and then just try to shade in these corners to make him look a little more three-dimensional. And now that the base of my frog is done, I'm using the lasso tool to add some more details. So I just kind of drew 2 circles, and I'm dropping in the cheek colors, and I like how, again, it looks very sharp because I use the lasso tool. It kind of almost reminds me of when you use collaging. Then I'm taking my 6B pencil and I used white to add in these details. And then I used dark blue for the face. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, leave a like or maybe even a comment and subscribe for more.